You wonder what would bring me to this wretched keep. Surely nothing less than the summoning of a great lord. Nearly a score of years removed, Talamar the Black beckoned me, and I answered him gladly.
Shadowgate, released first on the Apple Mac in '87 and then later retold on modern platforms in 2014, now finds a new home on the Nintendo Switch. How does this game hold up in 2019? And what does the Switch do to improve the original experience? Let's have a look. I'm going to preface that this review is going to have the original music from the NES in the background, because it's excellent. Shadowgate notices too, and allows you to toggle on and off retro music, text and transition animations, which honestly changed the vibe of the game way more than I was expecting. Take a look at the game with retro on. And now with the default modern settings. The new game paints a very serious, dark and brooding tone for the game as you explore through a relentlessly difficult castle of doom. The retro throwbacks completely transform this, turning it into a light-hearted romp through a silly haunted house. This is purely cosmetic of course, but it makes such a big difference that it has to be pointed out. So, with that out of the way, what is Shadowgate? Shadowgate is a hardcore adventure game where you take on the role of a soldier who's been beckoned to a mysterious castle by an ancient wizard to defeat an evil Dark Lord who is trying to release an evil found deep within the catacombs of the building. The game drip feeds you information about what is going on, which really adds to the creepy tone of the living castle the bulk of the game takes place in. Scrolls and books are peppered across the world to give you a little insight into the background you've been dropped into. Contextually this makes sense too, given that the character you play as is a simple soldier beckoned by a mysterious force from afar. Overall, it's a pretty standard fantasy tale, which befits a game that is a reimagining of a 1987 classic. It's extremely old school, painfully old school actually. I'll be dipping into that throughout the review. Shadowgate plays a lot like older adventure games. You crawl through mostly static images of rooms, using a cursor to highlight points of interest in the room and ultimately solve countless puzzles in order to complete the game. To navigate through the world you have a series of different actions like go, combine, hit, look at, speak and open. The number of different actions is quite intimidating, and although you do get used to it eventually, there are many times in the game where the order of these commands is important and constantly inputting the incorrect commands becomes tiresome quickly. To partly aid this, you utilise a wheel which brings up items, equipment, spells and more. Conveniently, the wheel does not include actions that do nothing when interacting with an object, which makes the UI very clean. You'll be using the wheel a lot, and although it is a novel and efficient way to use the game's actions, it is a good solution to a serious problem I have with the game. Even on the final moments of the game, having become pretty efficient with navigating the wheel, I was still going into the wrong menus and pressing things in the wrong order, when really it shouldn't be this hard. Particularly frustrating were puzzles that required such a specific command that you'll find yourself solving a puzzle but not using the exact item or command on the specific object in question, and so walking away from said puzzle thinking you were missing something. Speaking of the puzzles, remember how I said hardcore? This game is extremely difficult. A bunch of the puzzles were excellent logic driven affairs that had me scratching my head but then smiling when I found out the obvious answer. An example of this is a part of the game where you need to enter through a drawbridge but it's shut. The answer is to use a piece of rope you find in a nearby well and combining it with a hook you find earlier in the game to create a grapple to allow you entry to the drawbridge's opening lever through a window above. A huge chunk of puzzles are unfortunately unreasonably difficult, forcing you to use a spell that has no description on a fairly random object that is on the other side of the game world to unlock something seemingly irrelevant on another distant part of the map. In a modern game, a good puzzle seems fair because you know the limits of your character well. In a Zelda Breath of the Wild shrine puzzle, each area is unique, but the puzzles are fair because the game gives you a set of rules that it sticks to. In a lot of older point-and-click style games, there tends to be times where the solution to a puzzle is using an item on something that you never knew could be used in that way, and Shadowgate 2014 follows that trend. Maybe I just haven't got enough experience with these types of adventure games, but this seems very unfair and slows the pace of the game to a crawl, even on the Apprentice difficulty. There are higher difficulty modes, Journeyman and Master, that make the game harder by adding more and more complex puzzle elements, giving you less leeway if you make a fatal mistake, and, ruthlessly, adding a mechanic where you need to keep replacing your torch, otherwise it will burn out and you won't be able to see anything. If you don't pick up enough torches that are scattered throughout the world, you are literally perma-dead and will have to hope you can revert to another save that isn't miles away from where you got to.
'Tis a sad thing that your adventures have ended here.
Don't get me wrong, these difficulty modes are great. They're creative ways of making the game harder, but I cannot imagine a player would have a good time playing through Master difficulty for the first time. Then again, there are people who make it their goal to beat Dark Souls with a Guitar Hero controller, so there must be people in the market who want to torture themselves through a run of Shadowgate on Master difficulty. With all of this negativity, you've probably come to the conclusion that I don't recommend this game. There is a real sense of a pen and paper D&D style game from the way the command system works. I enjoyed a lot of Shadowgate, but I couldn't help but come away with the feeling that games have changed a lot, and sometimes for a good reason. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy text-heavy screen-to-screen type games, but this game felt overcomplicated for the sake of sticking to its retro roots. The silver lining on this particular version of the game is that the Switch version is the best way to play it. It's a flawless port, running at native resolution and 60 FPS, but you would expect that. What I did not expect was complete touch control, which even Nintendo themselves never bothered to implement in their own first-party titles. The game lends very well to touch control, and having this game on a handheld is by far the most preferred way of playing, as you can easily pick up and play from the Switch sleep state and do a little more adventuring in small chunks. Shadowgate is a fun game, which can be completed in an hour and a half if you know exactly what to do, but will take you many hours longer than that figuring out what to do. If that sounds like an appealing premise to you, then get this game. There is not a lot like it on the Switch right now, and the handheld format lends greatly to the nature of the game. But for my tastes, there was too much time head scratching and too little actual adventuring.